It all started with a small crack, a shift so subtle that I didn't notice it at first. Looking back, the signs were there. The distracted looks, the late nights, the conversations that abruptly ended when I walked into the room. But when you've been married for 16 years, you learn to overlook certain things. You assume the foundation is strong enough to survive a few hairline fractures. It was a Wednesday when everything began to unravel. I was working from home, catching up on reports while sipping stale coffee. The kids, Emma and Noah, were still at school, and my wife, Laura, was supposed to be showing a property on the other side of town. Real estate kept her busy, but she loved it. Selling dreams, she used to say with that easy smile I fell in love with. Around noon, I received a text from Laura. "Hey, running late. Meeting a client after the showing. Don't wait for me for dinner." I frowned. It wasn't unusual, but something about the message felt off. Short, transactional. No "love you" or even her usual winking emoji. I shook it off. Life gets busy. People get tired. It didn't mean anything. At least that's what I told myself. That evening I made pasta for the kids. Emma, our 15-year-old, was glued to her phone, typing with the intensity of a Wall Street broker. Noah, 12 and still sweetly innocent, chattered about his upcoming soccer tournament. We laughed, ate, and played a quick game of cards before bedtime. Felt normal. Laura came home around 10, smelling faintly of wine and something floral. Expensive, not her usual perfume. She looked surprised to see me still up. "Long day?" I asked casually, keeping my tone light. "Yeah. Clients from hell?" She sighed, kicking off her heels. "Did the kids behave?" "Like angels." I paused. "You missed dinner." I grabbed something on the way back. She kissed my cheek, a little too quickly, and disappeared upstairs. The next few days passed uneventfully, but the sense of something being wrong lingered. A shadow I couldn't quite place. Then came the first real blow. It was Saturday morning when I found it. A single receipt tucked into the glove compartment of her car. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for the phone charger she always left there. The receipt was from a boutique hotel across town. Room 214. Paid in cash. My stomach twisted. I could have asked her right then, demanded an explanation. But something stopped me. A whisper of caution. A deep-rooted fear of what I might hear. Instead, I waited. I needed more than a gut feeling and a suspicious receipt. I couldn't let my family crumble over a misunderstanding, or worse, over the truth. The following week, I started paying closer attention. Laura's schedule became erratic, her excuses more frequent. Last-minute showings, late closings, emergency client meetings. One evening, she claimed she was working late, but when I drove past her office, the lights were off. I told myself there could be a dozen reasonable explanations. I wanted to believe that. Then came the call that shattered everything. It was a Thursday afternoon. I was at work when an unknown number flashed on my phone. Normally, I'd ignore it, but something compelled me to answer. "Mr. Nolan?" A woman's voice asked, hesitant but firm. "Yes. Who's this?" "This is Rachel. We don't know each other, but I think our spouses are having an affair." The room tilted. "Excuse me?" I whispered. "My husband. His name is Daniel. He works in real estate too." I found messages on his phone. "With your wife." I staggered back into my chair, heart pounding. Couldn't be true. Laura wasn't capable of something like this. We had a life. A home, children, years of shared memories. There must be some mistake, I managed. "I thought the same," Rachel said quietly. "But I have proof." Her voice broke on the last word, but she quickly composed herself. "I'm sending you screenshots. Check your messages." Seconds later, my phone buzzed. There they were, texts between Laura and Daniel. Intimate, explicit, familiar in ways that made me feel sick. I ended the call, numb and trembling. For the next few minutes, I couldn't breathe. Then came the anger, a blinding, scorching rage that made my hands shake. But underneath that was something worse. Despair. When Laura came home that evening, I was waiting in the kitchen, pretending to organize mail. She kissed me on the cheek like nothing had changed, like she hadn't destroyed everything. I couldn't confront her, not yet. I needed time to think, to plan. If I played my cards right, maybe I could salvage something. But deep down, I already knew. This wasn't just the end of my marriage. It was the beginning of something far more dangerous. The following days felt like living in someone else's life. I moved through routines like a ghost. Work, errands, soccer practice, parent-teacher meetings, all while pretending my world hadn't shattered. But inside, I was unraveling. Every glance from Laura felt like a threat, every touch like poison. She had no idea I knew, and I intended to keep it that way, at least until I figured out what came next. Rachel and I agreed to meet at a coffee shop on the quiet side of town. She was already there when I arrived, nervously stirring a cup of tea. Her eyes were puffy, as if she hadn't slept in days. "Thank you for coming," she said, voice trembling. I nodded, still unsure how much I wanted to hear. "You said you had more proof." She hesitated before sliding a small envelope across the table. "Printouts from Daniel's email and hotel receipts. They've been meeting for months." I opened the envelope, stomach churning. Everything was there, messages confirming meetups, reservations made in cash. Detailed, cold, ruthless. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know how this feels." I clenched my fists under the table, forcing calm. "What do you want from me?" "Answers," she said, her voice hardening. "I want to know why, how long, and if they're planning something worse." I blinked. "What do you mean worse?" She bit her lip, looking away. "Daniel's ambitious. He's done shady deals before, fraud, laundering, but nothing ever stuck. I thought he'd changed." My pulse quickened. "You think this is about money?" "I don't know." Her voice dropped to a whisper. But I found something unsettling. From her bag, she pulled out another envelope, this one labeled in bold, red ink, life insurance policy. I froze. "Your wife's signature is on it," Rachel said quietly. "Daniel filed it last month. $2 million payout. You're listed as the insured." The walls seemed to close in around me. My head spun with horrifying possibilities. This wasn't just an affair. It was a scheme, a calculated, merciless plot. Rachel reached out, her fingers trembling. I didn't know what else to do. "You needed to know." I sat there, paralyzed by the weight of her words. My wife and her lover hadn't just betrayed me. They might be planning something far more sinister. That night I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the house felt amplified. The creak of floorboards, the wind scratching at the windows. Was Laura lying awake too, plotting my demise while I stared at the ceiling? The next morning I started digging. I checked our joint bank account first. Everything seemed normal at first glance, but a few transactions stood out. Frequent cash withdrawals from Laura's personal account. Thousands of dollars. I called the life insurance company, pretending to be curious about our policy details. After some security questions, the representative confirmed what Rachel had said. A new policy taken out in my name. Laura was listed as the sole beneficiary. I hung up, hands shaking. The betrayal now felt like a noose tightening around my neck. I needed help, but from someone who wouldn't be easily scared off. There was only one person who fit that description. My old college friend Alex, now a private investigator. We hadn't spoken in years, but he owed me a favor, or at least he used to. I called him, barely able to explain through the storm of emotions. "I think my wife and her partner are planning something dangerous." "Dangerous how?" Alex asked sharply. I swallowed hard. "I think they want me dead." There was a long pause. "Meet me at my office. Don't talk to her. Don't do anything reckless." I agreed, hanging up just as Laura walked into the room, fresh from her morning run. She smiled, sweet, effortless, deceptive. "You okay?" she asked, concern softening her features. For a moment, I saw the woman I used to love, the woman I'd built a life with. It almost broke me. "Just tired." I lied. "Didn't sleep well." "Maybe you should take the day off," she suggested, brushing her fingers gently against my arm. "We could Spend some time together. Her touch burned like acid. I forced a smile. Maybe later. She hesitated, searching my face for something. Did she suspect I knew? Or was she still playing her part, waiting for the right moment to strike? As soon as she left for work, I drove straight to Alex's office. He met me at the door, his sharp, calculating gaze taking in every detail. "Start from the beginning," he ordered, locking the door behind us. I told him everything, the affair, the insurance policy, the secret withdrawals, the messages Rachel had found. His expression darkened with every word. "This isn't just infidelity," Alex said grimly. "This is a setup." He tapped his pen against the table, lost in thought. "They've been covering their tracks well, but not perfectly. What do we do?" I asked, voice cracking. He leaned forward. "We make them think they've won." I stared at him, confused. "What does that mean?" Alex's mouth twisted into a grim smile. "We let them play their game, but we'll be 5 steps ahead." The plan he laid out was risky, borderline insane, but it was the only chance I had. If Laura and Daniel thought they were in control, they'd be careless. And that's when I'd strike. For the next few days, I lived as if nothing had changed. Every breath, every glance at Laura felt like walking a razor's edge. She was still sweet, attentive even, playing the perfect wife. But I saw through it now. Every smile felt rehearsed, every kiss a calculated move. Alex worked fast. He tapped into Laura's phone and email, careful not to raise suspicion. Meanwhile, Rachel kept feeding us intel from Daniel's end, playing the role of the desperate, oblivious wife. What we found made my blood run cold. Encrypted messages, coded payment schedules, a finalized transfer of funds to an offshore account, and a date 3 weeks away, marked only as closure. We didn't know exactly what they were planning, but it was clear I wouldn't survive past that date if I didn't act first. I played along, pretending life was normal. Date nights, family dinners, even a weekend getaway Laura insisted on to reconnect. Every second was suffocating, but I couldn't let her suspect a thing. 2 weeks before the marked date, Alex found something that changed everything. A confirmation email for a private yacht rental under Daniel's name. Departure, 8 p.m. on the date labeled closure. Destination, international waters. They weren't just planning my murder, they were going to make me disappear entirely. That's when we set the trap. The day finally came. I acted distant and distracted, just enough for Laura to believe I suspected nothing. Alex coordinated with law enforcement, ensuring they were ready when the moment came. We couldn't afford any mistakes. That evening, Laura suggested we go for a drive. Her voice was honey smooth, but her eyes gleamed with something darker, anticipation. "Sure," I agreed, keeping my expression blank. "Let me grab my jacket." In the car, the air between us crackled with tension. She played soft jazz on the radio, humming along like this was just another quiet evening together. "You've been so stressed lately," she murmured. "I thought getting away might help." "Good idea," I said, keeping my voice steady. She drove us toward the marina, the setting sun casting long, bloody shadows across the water. My hands clenched involuntarily, but I forced myself to stay calm. When we arrived, Daniel was already waiting by the dock, his figure illuminated by the soft glow of the yacht's deck lights. His expression shifted when he saw me. A flicker of surprise, quickly replaced by a forced smile. "Surprise!" Laura beamed, looping her arm through mine. "Thought we'd all celebrate together." My stomach churned. "You shouldn't have." Daniel extended his hand, but I ignored it, stepping onto the yacht. The cabin was elegant, almost cozy, designed for comfort, but with an undertone of something predatory. "Drink," Laura offered, already pouring whiskey into a glass. I watched her carefully. Her hands were steady, her movements fluid, practiced. She handed me the glass with that familiar, disarming smile. I took it but didn't drink. "So, what's the occasion?" Her eyes sparkled with amusement. "A fresh start." Before I could respond, Daniel grabbed me from behind, locking an arm around my throat. The glass shattered to the floor as I struggled against his grip. Laura stood still, watching with eerie detachment. "Make it quick," she instructed coldly. Daniel dragged me toward the deck railing, his breath ragged with effort. I thrashed, knocking over a patio chair in desperation. My feet scraped against the slick deck, but his grip was iron-tight. This was it. Then, from the shadows, Alex emerged like a ghost. A single, deafening gunshot cracked through the air. Daniel crumpled to the ground, blood staining the white deck. Laura gasped, stumbling back. "What they—" Before she could flee, police swarmed the yacht, shouting commands. They pinned her down, slapping cuffs on her wrists. Her wild, disbelieving eyes locked onto mine, desperate and betrayed. "You set me up!" she screamed, venom dripping from every word. I wiped blood from my lip, breathing hard. "You never saw it coming." Daniel was alive but barely conscious when medics arrived. Laura's screams echoed across the marina as she was hauled away, kicking and cursing like a trapped animal. The aftermath was a media circus, high-profile arrests, charges of conspiracy, attempted murder, and financial fraud. Every twisted secret unraveled under investigation, each detail darker than the last. They'd planned everything: my death, the insurance payout, the offshore escape, believing themselves untouchable. Laura never spoke to me again after her arrest. Her lawyer tried to frame me as an abusive husband, claiming self-defense, but the mountain of evidence crushed any hope of acquittal. The trial lasted 8 brutal months. She was sentenced to life without parole. Daniel, facing less severe charges due to his cooperation, received 20 years. Rachel and I kept in touch for a while, bound by shared trauma, but eventually, life pulled us in different directions. As for me, I sold the house, moved to another state with Emma and Noah, and started fresh. The scars ran deep, but I was free, truly free, for the first time in years. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear Laura's voice in my dreams. Cold, calculating, full of promises she never intended to keep. But I survived her. And in the end, that's all that matters. Thanks for watching. What would you do in Mark's place? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more gripping stories.